And a public information officer. Thank you for being with us, sir. What can you tell us about this last communication with JFK Jr.'s plane?
All I really know at this time is that it was at 9:39 p.m. and it was with the FAA, and it was on its final approach to Martha's Vineyard.
So at 9:39, to the best of your information, JFK Jr. made a contact with the airport, with the flight controllers, the air traffic controllers at Martha's Vineyard Airport, that he was on a final descent.
That is correct.
At 9:39.
Todd Bergen is a professional. What you heard him doing just now is what he does every day. He answers reporters' questions about the Coast Guard's involvement in rescues of plane and ship disasters. We have seen that at precisely 9:39, the plane had stopped descending and paused at 2,500 feet. FAA regulations require that the plane pause at 2,500 feet, contact the tower, and receive permission to continue. And Bergen reports that it was at this precise moment, 9:39, that Kennedy did in fact contact the tower. Bergen's report is absolutely consistent with the radar information that we got from the NTSB that was used to reconstruct the last moments of the plane before it crashed. Bergen's report is absolutely credible. If he had been off by 1 minute on either side, if he had said 9:38, he'd have been wrong. The plane was still executing the turn and was not yet on final approach. If he had said 9:40, he'd have been wrong. The plane was on its way into the water. How was he able to identify the exact minute that the plane was holding at 2,500 feet, waiting to get clearance from the tower before descending? He had to have gotten that information from FAA flight personnel in the tower at Martha's Vineyard Airport, that Kennedy indeed contacted the tower at 9:39. There is no other possible explanation. This question of radio contact with the Martha's Vineyard Tower is enormously important for a couple of reasons. You see, whenever you contact air traffic control, your particular radar blip is then entered into the FAA's air traffic computer system. If anywhere on your flight path your plane should happen to descend below 100 feet, the computer will immediately set off an alarm at the FAA traffic control facility. So therefore, as a result of Kennedy's 9:39 radio contact with the tower, the plane should have set off a low-altitude alarm in the FAA's traffic control offices when the plane descended below 100 feet. The FAA should have begun the search at 9:40 when this low-altitude alarm went off. They knew before the plane hit the water. FAA regulations also require that a search be begun any time a plane contacts the tower on its final approach and then fails to land within 5 minutes. As a result of John Kennedy's radio contact with the tower then, the FAA also should have begun a search at 9:44 when John Kennedy's plane failed to land. How long did it take the FAA to begin searching the approaches to the Martha's Vineyard Airport? If this outrageous delay was actually part of a criminal conspiracy, then it's obvious that this information about John Kennedy contacting the tower would have to be disappeared. And it was disappeared. At 12:30, Bergen was removed. He was silenced. He disappeared from any further reports of any kind. In fact, all government agencies, including the FAA and the Coast Guard, suddenly went silent, and reporters were now referred to the Pentagon. That's right. Suddenly the Pentagon became the center for reporting what was supposedly a peacetime activity of search and rescue, resulting from a peacetime accident.
All right, we're told the Pentagon news conference is about to get underway. Let's go there right now.
This is an easily used facility. Both the Department of Defense and the Coast Guard, and to try to describe to you what...
The Pentagon overtly took control of the news reporting of the crash. This was certainly extraordinary. And Lieutenant Colonel Steve Rourke was brought out to do the official line.
I only know for sure that they did not talk to the tower at Martha's Vineyard.
No need to mention Todd Bergen's report, because it now officially never happened. Nothing to see here, folks. Now let's move on.
Along the route, they may have spoken to somebody, but not at Martha's Vineyard.
Certainly not at Martha's. They never made contact with the tower at Martha's Vineyard.
That's my understanding.
Colonel Rourke is lying. There's no way that Bergen's report could be false. None. The news people didn't believe Rourke for 1 second, and they continued all through the day to report what Bergen had told them.
10 o'clock, and as we've been telling you all afternoon, his last contact with Martha's Vineyard Airport was apparently at 9:39 with air traffic controllers about 17 miles off of Martha's Vineyard, and that is now...
Of course, if they wanted to make Bergen's report go away, the killers also had to shut down the honest people at FAA who had told Bergen about the tower contact, and they did.
Do you have any knowledge about that, or whether they contacted Otis, or whether they contacted any other tower within the region?
No, I do not have any more information, and the FAA would be a better point of contact. I have time for one
waiting to hear from the Federal Aviation Administration on anything they might add as a result of listening to the tapes, the conversations between, the transmissions between the airplane, John F. Kennedy Jr.'s airplane, and air traffic controllers on the ground.
Your sister-in-law.
It would be really interesting to hear from the Federal Aviation Administration. They must have by now listened to the audio tapes of the air traffic controllers' conversations with JFK Jr.'s airplane from the time that it left. I'm surprised that we haven't heard anything from the FAA just yet.
Hopefully we will hear something from them soon that will give us an indication of what might have gone wrong.
From the radar screens, the FAA has said nothing this afternoon. We've only heard from the Coast Guard officials and for the Civil Air Patrol people, but this is what we have. With JFK Jr.'s plane.
This report by the official Coast Guard spokesman was probably the most significant piece of information that appeared in the early reports and was then washed away. But it certainly wasn't the only piece of professional on-the-scene reporting that was disappeared from the news by the conspirators at the Pentagon.
At about 02:15 this morning, Coast Guard Operations Center at Group Woods Hole in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, received a telephone call from a family friend indicating that John F. Kennedy, his wife Carolyn Bissett, and his sister-in-law Lauren Bissett, who had earlier departed from Caldwell Airport in Fairfield, New Jersey, were late in arriving at Martha's Vineyard.
Now wait. John Kennedy Jr.'s plane was expected at the family home at 10. Friends of Lauren's were expecting her at the Martha's Vineyard Airport at 9:30, but no one reported the plane missing for 4 hours, not until 2 a.m.? That's not a very believable story, is it? And it's not true either.
Connection at that point, because that's a question that I've had. If they knew the plane was missing, and this is what I heard earlier this morning, that there were family members, a family member of Lauren, or a friend of Lauren Bissett, the sister-in-law of John Kennedy Jr., Carolyn's husband. They were apparently waiting for her at the airport, and when she didn't arrive...
These friends of Lauren Bissett, waiting for her at the Martha's Vineyard Airport, contacted Adam Budd, a licensed pilot and airport employee who first contacted the Martha's Vineyard Tower and then called FAA officials in Bridgeport, Connecticut to report that, quote, Kennedy Jr.'s plane was overdue. Any one of these phone calls should have caused the FAA to begin a search. Instead, FAA officials did nothing.
Rescue and search crews were contacted early this morning when family members expecting the Kennedys at Martha's Vineyard at about 10 o'clock heard nothing, contacted the airport, were told there had been no word from the plane. They contacted FAA officials who then...
In response to these phone calls, the FAA officials did nothing. 1 hour later, at 11 p.m., Senator Edward Kennedy became involved. He contacted the FAA to let them know that the plane was missing. A U.S. senator is going to be able to get some action, right? Wrong. The FAA officials did nothing. Pretty outrageous. And as you can imagine, it attracted the attention of the reporters trying to cover the story, and they tried to grill Colonel Rourke about this outrageous discrepancy.
Colonel, Linda Killian from People magazine. I just wonder if there's any information about why, when the plane was expected in about 9:30, if there's any idea why you were not notified until 3 in the morning, and how important...
Well, now you see why the Pentagon had to take over the press coverage. That way, if some terrorist like Linda Killian at People magazine tried to throw a bomb or ask a good question, they could just cut her off. This question of why the plane was not officially reported missing until 2 a.m. never got answered, never got asked again, and never got any mention in any of the media. But so did the Kennedys just give up trying to get a search started? No, they didn't. At 2:15 a.m., a family friend, Carol Radowell, got the bright idea to contact